Alright, peace to you, ladies and gentlemen. How are you? Now, in today's video, I just want to put a little message out there for all of these kind of red pill slash PUA slash manosphere guys. These are men who I'm very critical of because I think the doctrine, the worldview that they preach, it's a big trap for young men. Young men who are seeking true masculinity. They're seeking something, an alternative to the liberal paradigm that's been shoved down their throat, which does shame real masculinity. They get sucked down these like Andrew Tate rabbit holes or these kind of manosphere rabbit holes. And really, I just want you guys to consider one thing. That is this. Um, you know, and I understand. I understand that modern women have many, many problems. They do, of course. I think they have deluded, inflated egos. They have insane standards that they put on themselves. These women, they'll rate themselves as 10 on 10s and they don't even know how to cook and clean. It is crazy. Women have a lot of problems, but I would just exhort you men, firstly, to stay away from this red pill manosphere content. It will destroy your life. And really, just consider the fact that these men, so many of these YouTube channels out there, whether it's Manosphere, whether it's what's that one guy, Sandman, these kinds of guys, their whole life is literally dedicated to complaining about women. Their whole life is dedicated to complaining about women. That's it. Oh, watch 14 women get rejected and burned. Watch 3 women get ghosted. Modern women embarrassing themselves for 15 minutes straight. Literally, supposedly they're MGTOW, supposedly they're men going their own way, but their entire life is based on making fun of women. That's how they make their income. They're just a bunch of bitter, butthurt men. And I acknowledge the truth of some of the things they're saying. Yes, there are issues with modern women, but uh, I don't think it is resourceful, nor do I think it's masculine to constantly attack women like literally as your living, as your life's work, your contribution, your great message to the world. And on the other end of this, I would actually say, let's focus more on men's problems. I agree with you, yes, that men are the leaders of society. Yes, men have more accountability than women. Women do have a certain level of accountability on their own. Yes, women are to reason and think for themselves, but not as much as men. Men have been given more by God. So how about instead we focus more on the problems of men? Because ultimately, what we see nowadays with the degeneracy of the women in the West, it is due to a failure and lack of male leadership. Okay, and you guys are not helping the problem. Okay, you have a bunch of incels who are on their computer in their mom's basement, just watching your videos and complaining about the problems of women and the destruction of Western women and Western civilization. Okay, let's deal with actually the problems that men face. Let's deal with the lack of leadership. Let's deal with the selfishness. Let's deal with the hedonism. Let's deal with the lack of faith in God that many men have. Let's deal with the irresponsibility of modern men, how they refuse to get married. Let's deal with their lack of staying in shape and their refusal to eat good foods and to put good things or make good things as part of their diet. Let's uh, criticize the dereliction of men, the laziness, the consistent playing of video games and entertainment technology. Let's talk about all of these things before we start complaining about women, because at least I hope you agree with me that men are the leaders of society, right? If we are, then let's deal with the problems of men and put the women bashing a little bit to a side, because it's getting quite embarrassing, honestly, when your whole life's work is centered around making fun of women and pointing at the problems of women. Yeah, these modern women are delusional. Yeah, I get it, but what else are they going to be in the wake of such a vacuum of male leadership, this vacuum left over with the lack of male leadership? No fathers in their lives, no real masculine fathers, no real masculine older brothers, no, even I empathize with the sisters out there. If there's any genuine, good, feminine, righteous sisters in the West who want to get married, I empathize with you as well. Like, I understand. Yeah, you look around and there's no really good men to marry. Even within the so-called Quran alone community, all these people want to do is just like mentally masturbate online and talk about their own self-righteousness. And I get it. I get it. Just as a man struggles with finding a good woman in the society, so too does a woman as well. So let's focus on the leaders. Let's focus on those who are more accountable, as opposed to picking low-hanging fruit. Of course, the women are crazy now. Obviously, they're suffering from a lack of male leadership, just like a child. It's like, yeah, obviously a child is going to behave pretty stupid if he doesn't have a good father to guide him and to kind of set him straight and put him in place, right? Like I said, let's deal with those who are the real shakers and movers of society, and that's men, and stop focusing in on women, because it gets quite embarrassing. You know, these men are supposedly going their own way. They're supposedly MGTOW, but they spend a lot of time talking about women and complaining about them. And you know, for you type of guys who are just constantly bashing on women, talking about them hitting the wall and making fun of their body count, and yes, all but not hitting the wall. Women have God made them to age, right? Just as a man has a natural cycle, you know, he starts off weak, then he gets strong by God's leave, then he loses his strength as he gets older into his 50s and 60s. Women go through the same thing as well. These are natural phases of life we all go through. But, you know, specifically the whoredom and the body count, yeah, that is shameful. But for all you guys who, you know, you're just sitting in your basement, playing your video games while hearing these videos in the background, talking about women, be like, yeah, man, yeah, Western society's falling apart. These women ain't even worth marrying, bro. They're totally screwed up and delusional. And complaining about women, bro, I don't feel bad for you in the slightest. I don't feel bad for you in the slightest. I really genuinely feel like and I'm not saying this for everybody, of course, but for the vast majority of the Quran alone, so-called Quran alone believers out there, and believing body, as it were, I don't even think the majority of them are ready for marriage. Even if that wonderful, great, virgin, traditional, feminine, long dress wearing, head wrap wearing woman were to come their way, I don't even think they deserve her. I don't even think they deserve her. I don't think that they have the mentality that is required to take care of a woman, nor do I think they possess the masculinity that is a prerequisite for having such a woman. No, I don't feel bad for you men. I don't feel bad for your loneliness at all, because, you know, for all those really good men, the good masculine leader men who are focused and oriented on the Most High, they're not going to be worried about all these problems regarding women. They're just going to focus in on their mission when it comes to God. They're just going to focus in on their mission that is oriented towards the Most High. Their mind is going to be oriented towards the Most High. They don't have the time to consistently complain and beat on women. They don't. They're focused on one thing, and that is God. And if the Most High brings them a good woman, that's, you know, that he allows that to come their way, then great. They take the blessing, they marry her, and they give thanks to the Most High. And if the Most High does not decide to do that, if they have to go solo dolo for a while, that's totally fine as well. In the end, God will have that woman for them in the garden. So, you know, these men who are just complaining and complaining and complaining, I don't feel bad for you. I don't feel bad for you, because we are the leaders in society. We are the planks in society. We are the ones whom the women rely on. And the fact that the majority of the women have gone astray, it says a lot about us. It says a lot about us. Rather than saying so much about them, it reflects more so on our own shortcomings. And I want you to consider that long and hard, okay? But anyways, men, that's really all I got to say on the matter. I hope this talk was a blessing. And yeah, peace to you. Remember, deceit abounds, so keep your eyes wide open. Peace out. Peace and blessings in the name of the Most High, viewer. My name is Walid Naeem, and I am a zealous submitter to the one true God, the creator of all mankind. Do you notice something wrong with the world? Something strange? Despite us having a church, synagogue, and mosque in every neighborhood, how has this entire Western civilization fallen into abject atheism, nihilism, and savagery? Why does life just seem so dull, so meaningless, and so devoid of anything real in the Occidental world? Despite the ubiquitous presence of these religious institutions, why are our so-called Muslim sons in large numbers drinking, smoking, partying, and chasing after women, with no seeming desire to do anything more with their life other than satisfy their base pleasures, when God has commanded them to be clean, righteous, and responsible leaders of their community? And why are our hijabi so-called Muslim daughters walking around with tight jeans that reveal their figure, with TikTok accounts posting semi-provocative, self-absorbed videos of themselves online for the world to see, when God has commanded them to lengthen their garments and be modest in their mannerisms? What has happened here? These young men and women are supposed to be making themselves right before God, while raising the next generation of ardent defenders of the holy faith. But it seems that Islam features no more in their lives other than a scarf on their head, a Friday fidgeting around in the mosque when their parents forced them to go against their will, or a decorative hanger in their car. At this rate, if God allows us to continue going down the road it is, then Islam and the Quran will become pretty much non-existent in the lives of most of our descendants, if it wasn't already non-existent now. If we do not take a stand soon, in a few generations our children's children will likely be indistinguishable from the secular West. Is that the kind of world we want to live in? Our kids to live in? A world practically devoid of the remembrance of the one God and all things sane? I obviously can't speak for you, but for my own self, I can personally say, count me out of it. I'm not going to sit here and just watch my brothers and sisters, those who claim to believe in God alone, believe in Judgment Day, His prophets and angels, and all the other aspects of this holy creed, get duped into going to hell. I'm not going to let this happen without at least something of an effort on my end to reroute this dark trajectory. So, again, how in the world do we end up here? There is a mosque in practically every neighborhood in the West, and no shortage of donations that get dropped in their boxes. They have had lots of funding, lots of time, and unquestioning support from their respective congregations, yet somehow have been run over by the secular atheist. All of their so-called Muslim children go to the atheist, secular public schools for most of their week to be taught beliefs that are completely incompatible with the Quran. And we wonder why they have ended up the way they are. If these houses, and by these houses I mean the mosques, were truly of God, that were doing everything right, then why would our Lord let them get so decisively trampled upon by their enemies? Why do the wicked have all of the reins of power here? Clearly, something is not adding up. Well, it is my thesis here today that the vast, vast majority of mosques that exist in this world today have lost their way and follow a religion which is completely foreign to the Quran. This is why they have failed so miserably in the West, and it seems that God has forgotten them. In truth, the real reason behind their shortcoming is that they, and many of us, have forgotten God Himself, which is why He has left us here collecting our bitter receipts. So, what are my exact criticisms of the mosques today? As a Muslim and a man committed to the truth above all else, what are my personal gripes with their institution, which claims to be for God? The first glaring problem I can think of is that the majority of people who call themselves Muslim have allied themselves with a body of literature that is foreign to the Word of God, treating it equal to, and in fact above, the Quran itself. Of course, I am talking about the Hadith. Listen, the facts are this. There is no justification within the Quran which tells us to follow this hadith stuff, which came hundreds of years after the Prophet Muhammad died, and therefore he could have had no ability to oversee what people have said about him and determine if it is true or false. It is now becoming crystal clear, especially in the last 10 to 20 years, that many, many things that have been ascribed to him in their most quote-unquote authoritative texts, which they call their Sahih Hadiths, are forgeries that directly contradict God's final revelation. To take these words of men, i.e. the Hadith, and hold them to be equally authoritative to the words of God would be breaking the first and most important commandment, which is to worship God alone, making no equals with Him. To say that these supposed words of Muhammad, which are not even Muhammad's own words, but simply very doubtful rumors about what people who existed hundreds of years after him say he said, that have been decided upon by the scholars as authoritative, holds equal, or in fact any weight in our faith comparable to the verbatim words of God Himself, the Holy Quran, is idolatry. You are exalting man's words to the status of divinity, which should only be given to God's words. Nothing comes even close to the Quran, because God, the creator of the heavens and the earth, is its author. This includes the Hadith too, which pales in comparison and is superfluous to the glorious Quran. If you are interested in seeing a full refutation of the Hadith, you may watch my video titled A Defense of Prophet Muhammad, David Wood and Hadith Exposed, which is linked below. In it, along with refuting and putting in his place the worst opponent of Islam on the internet, Mr. David Wood, I also expose how the Hadith is completely contradictory to the Quran and the source of much of the Muslim world's problems. It is a 2-hour-long documentary where I seek to demonstrate the true character of Muhammad in the Quran, defending his history and personality with primary source quotations. I clear the last prophet of God's name from the people who have tarnished his reputation the most, which are certain types of Christians, and, sad to say, Hadith-following Muslims, which have said many terrible things about him. No, Muhammad was not a money-hungry, tyrannical warlord who married a 6-year-old girl. He was a shy, humble, meek man who married adult women, had compassion for even his worst enemies, and oftentimes had a tough time even standing up for himself out of fear of hurting other people's feelings. This is all demonstrated in detail in my video. Once again, the link for that will be in the description under the tab, The True Character of Muhammad in the Quran. So that is the first problem with the mosques, the reason for which I feel they have been forsaken by God, their adoption of an apostate literature which contradicts their foundational scripture. The second point of contention I have with many of the mosques is their seeming unwillingness to say anything controversial which may make them face persecution from their government. The fact that 9/11 was not only an inside job, but the fact that no planes hit the Twin Towers on that day, and the whole charade was a hoax designed by the governments of the world to forever frame the Muslim people as terrorists and justify invasions in our countries, should be taught to every man, woman, and child. This great fraud of the September attacks has left such a lasting, enduring reputation on every brown person and Muslim in general that it should be discussed in every mosque. Our people are not responsible for that crime, but it was the governments of the world who carried out that plot and framed us for it. 9/11 is just only one small example, though. There are many, many other quote-unquote conspiracy theories, which are really just conspiracy facts, avoided by the mosques due to their controversy, like the fact that the monetary system in the West is an ungodly scam based on usury, the fact that the so-called healthcare system is a predatory empire which doesn't try to cure anybody, but instead makes money off of human suffering, the fact that sodomite propaganda is being promoted to the masses, including our children, and the fact that the thing which I will call the C-19er, to avoid censorship, was a hoax perpetrated by the powers that be to greatly expand their police state, censorship incentives, and surveillance systems worldwide in order to create their New World Order, and much more. These governments that have occupied our lands are de facto terrorist regimes, and the mosques seem to say nothing of it. They appear to be more concerned with not being labeled extremists while they live their comfortable, well-funded lives, avoiding topics that are hard to deal with due to the abject persecution they bring. That is my second problem with them. They're at the very least lack of awareness, or if not, perhaps lack of willingness to address the real geopolitical situation going on in the world. And lastly, my third trouble with the mainstream mosques, which can also be put into the category of conspiracy facts, is their complete ignorance on the true nature of the earth. It may sound as a shock to you, my viewer, that the Quran, the Bible, and in fact all of the ancient scriptures teach the earth is flat and stationary. This is the only model of the world which is compatible with those texts and also scientifically provable. This flat earth conspiracy, which should really be called the globe earth conspiracy, is one of the biggest lies of the modern world, we are told, and goes in line with what I said earlier about the endemic corruption of the governments of the world. Everything you have been told about where you live is a fabrication, and the space agencies are a shameless hoax. For a fully detailed presentation on the subject of flat earth, where I demonstrate the science, the history, the philosophy, the verses in the Bible and Quran proving it, and much more, you can read my book titled The Flat Earth Manifesto, which is linked in the description. This work runs to nearly 1,200 pages and is practically a textbook on not only the topic of flat earth, but the subject of physics proper, and I expose the biggest fraudulent religion of the West, which is science worship, otherwise known as scientism. As with all of my work, it too is available for free. No, you do not live on a pathetic speck of dust spinning around in the middle of nowhere in space. You live in a brilliant, intelligently designed terrarium created by God and are at the center of the universe. Again, to learn more, the link to the Flat Earth Manifesto will be in the description. Those right there are my three biggest scores against the mosques of today. There are more points I could bring up, but these are the major ones. These are the controversies which have estranged me from the rest of the so-called Muslim world. Believe me when I say that I would love to join them, and that it hurts me so deeply that I have to pit myself up against the very institution I was born and raised in, the mosques I attended from childhood, whose carpets upon which I walked, stood, prayed, and listened to the preaching in my earliest years. But that is the price to pay for the truth. My commitment to God and what is right is more important than my emotional attachments to a place that was once dear to my heart. Simply put, this is why I think God has forsaken us. This is why I think that the mosques have been steamrolled by the secular atheist. It is because most of us have abandoned the word of God, neglected preaching the truth, and instead chosen comfort over courageous action. That is my thesis to why this great falling away in the West has taken place. If this sounds shocking to you, if it sounds so unbelievable that the majority of the so-called Muslim world could be deceived so badly, then I simply have these verses in the Quran to show you. In the name of God, the Almighty and the Merciful. Chapter 6, verse 116. And if thou obey most of those upon the earth, they will lead thee astray from the path of God. They follow only assumption, and they are only guessing. Chapter 25, verse 30. And the messenger will say, O my Lord, my people took this Quran as a thing abandoned. God has really predicted this a millennia ago. He knew that the people who follow what is really right are few and far between, that the majority of men and women are led astray, and the people who claim to love Muhammad the most, i.e. mainstream Muslims, would abandon the glorious Quran. God has revealed to us 1,000 years ago that this all would be the case. It is my mission, therefore, by the will of God, to band together with like-minded believers who have understood the truth and work together to build a new institution from the ground up, founded upon prudent fear. We need to start fresh, start anew. We need to build a new mosque where people can hear the unfiltered preaching from the Quran alone, where men and women can get married, where children can play and be educated in the truth, and where the name of the Most High God, without any associate partners, can be remembered. We need a group of highly dedicated men who will raise and defend this institution with their own hands if need be, and go out into the world warning people of the punishment of God, bearing witness to the truth of his oneness. That is my mission, my viewer. If you found that this mission of mine has touched your heart and is something you want to get involved with, then feel free to contact me in the email below. I am located in Ontario, Canada, and I'm looking forward to form a community with like-minded believers who want to contribute to this great cause. I am neither a nationalist nor racially biased. If you follow the Quran alone and believe in the truth, then as far as I'm concerned, you are my brother in the faith. I prefer you over someone of my own kindred who denies God and commits corruption in the earth. My loyalties are primarily ideological, not racial. Remember, my viewer, that this life is short. Everything we do and don't do is recorded by God and will either bear witness for us or against us on the day of judgment. Hell is eternal, and I do not know about you, but as for me, I want to meet my Creator in the best state possible. I want to spend my life struggling to build up my people, the true Muslims, so that God may be pleased with me on that day. If you are interested in that, then feel free to join me. If not, then find something else good to do which will prepare you for your appointment with the Most High. That is where we are all going anyway. With that being said, I say peace and God bless to all of you good people. Take care, everyone.